This tiny little Lexus wants you to think differently about the Japanese luxury brand. It's called the LBX and it's the smallest Lexus luxury vehicle to date. And in this review, I'm going to tell you why it's big on value and some other really great things about this car, as well as some great alternatives to it. So stay tuned. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Let's get to it. If you're wondering what LBX stands for, it's Lexus Breakthrough Crossover, and the brand is hoping to break through into new buyer demographics with this car, aiming for younger buyers, but also those who already own a Lexus and are maybe looking for a second or third car as a runaround vehicle. And the pricing certainly positions it as something that you could aspire to if you're thinking about a high-grade mainstream SUV. The entry-level version is called the Luxury. It's a front-wheel drive hybrid SUV, and it costs $47,550 before on-road costs. And it does come with some really good standard features, including LED lighting all around the car. You also get 18-inch alloy wheels, a two-tone roof finish, and a power tailgate, as well as rain sensing wipers, keyless entry, push button start, a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, as well as a 9.8-inch touchscreen media system as standard with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, sat-nav, and cloud-based sat-nav. And there's also fake leather trim. It's called New Luxe, and it actually feels pretty convincing in some ways. It's a bit fake feeling in others. There's heated front seats, a power driver seat adjustment system, and a surround view camera as well. But if you want a few more features, then you need to step up to this one here, which is the Sports Luxury. It's available as a two-wheel drive. You'll see the price on your screen now. So that's a front-wheel drive model, or if you want or need all-wheel drive, you'll need to go for the top spec Sports Luxury all-wheel drive version, which is just under $57,000 before on-road costs. And it gets a few extra features above and beyond the entry-level version, different alloy wheels, but also a 13-speaker Mark Levinson sound system. There's ultra suede and leather accented interior upholstery, which I think looks and feels absolutely amazing. You also get a standard real leather steering wheel and gear selector, plus semi-autonomous parking assistance and active noise control. So it should be able to delete out some of the noise from the outside area or from inside the cabin, just like your noise cancelling headphones would. Now, if you're the sort of person who's not sure about buying and owning a car long term, or maybe you just hate buying and selling cars and dealing with dealerships and that sort of stuff, then there is a full service lease option for the new LBX. And it's available in a 3, 4, or 5-year term, and you can go onto the Lexus website and figure out what it might cost you to basically use this car. And it includes things like your registration, your servicing, and a few other really good features as well. I'm going to tell you some really great features about this Lexus in the ownership section, but hey, first I think I should tell you some of the best alternatives to it. When it comes to alternatives to this tiny little luxury SUV, there are some great options out there. Some of them are luxury branded, some of them aren't. Firstly, let's talk about the Toyota CHR. You can check out my detailed review. Hit the link in the description or at the top of the screen there. It does have styling ahead of some of the practicality elements, and it's pretty small too. So it could be right for you if you're okay with buying a Toyota and paying similar money to what you'd get if you're buying a Lexus. But hey, you might also think about the Audi Q2, which is a compact crossover model, very, very small on the outside, still spacious on the inside. And I reckon that the Q2 is a little bit overlooked because it does have a heap of features that you might appreciate. And there's a bunch of different powertrain options as well, but no hybrids. So it might not be ideal for you. And finally, if you are considering something that's very small and very frugal, but might not necessarily be hybrid, then you might want to check out the Škoda Kamiq. Yes, I said Škoda. Škoda has a really good mix of models in Australia. The Kamiq is the smallest one, and you can get it with a nice, powerful, turbocharged engine. And it's also a really well packaged car, a big boot, decent sized back seat, heaps of features, and lower pricing than the Lexus LBX. But tell me which one you would pick. If you'd pick any of those or something different, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Lexus won't go out of its way to tell you, but this is based on the Toyota Yaris Cross. It shares the same powertrains, the same architecture, but obviously it looks very different. The benefits are that, well, it's a bit more affordable than if they'd gone and tried to do this themselves, but also that it is tiny. It's just over 4.1 meters in length, so it's going to be a city-friendly car for you if you're looking for something this little. And at the back, well, I reckon it's got a fair bit of stance and presence to it. Now, let me show you the boot space. Now, this one here is the top spec, but it's a two-wheel drive model. You get an electric tailgate. The all-wheel drive version actually has a smaller boot than the front-wheel drive one. So just keep in mind, though, that underneath this boot floor, there is no spare wheel. All models come with a tyre repair kit. So if you live in a rural area, it might not necessarily be the right car for you. But hey, tell me what you think in the comments. The interior of this car does feel like a luxury SUV that's just been shrunk a little bit. And I'm okay with that because there is some serious wow factor in the cabin of this spec in particular. This is the sports luxury version with the suede finishes up along the dashboard and across the dash here. On the seats, you've got leather accented seat parts as well, plus a leather lined steering wheel and a leather gear knob. All of that makes it feel a bit more special than the entry-level version, which gets the fake leather trim and red stitching, which is a bit more sporty. And the steering wheel, well, it's a little bit squishier in that other car, but hey, the steering wheel in the base car does have some benefits because it doesn't have these silly haptic controls on the steering wheel. Instead, it's got actual physical buttons, and that's because it doesn't have a head-up display on that entry-level version, whereas this one does. The problem with these haptic controls is that they're very easy to bump when you're changing positions with your hands, turning a corner, and then something comes up on the head-up display and you get distracted. So they're not good. So the entry-level steering wheel is good, in my opinion. Now, let's talk about some of the elements of this cabin that make it feel pretty special. Aside from the materials, you've got this 9.8-inch touchscreen media system. As I've mentioned, it's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, sat-nav, and cloud-based satellite navigation because it's connected to the internet via the clouds somehow. It is a pretty high-tech system, although just like some of the other Lexus models I've tested, and Toyotas in fact, with this new software system, it does take a little bit of learning to get used to the menus in this screen, but you will. And there's a volume knob, thankfully. There's not any fan controller buttons, but there is a little fan controller slider down the bottom. You do get temperature controller buttons, seat heating buttons, and yes, you get seat heating in both grades, heated steering wheel in this top spec. So look, I think that the ease of use of this, you will get used to it easily enough. There's a 12.3-inch digital instrument display as well, and it takes a little bit of learning to get used to the menus as well, but it does have a nice clear display and it shows you things that you need to see at a glance, including the little EV mode indicator when you are driving in EV. Now, speaking of that, there's an EV mode button down here, so if you want to, you can try and flick it into EV mode if you're in a city situation and you just want to try and conserve as much fuel as you can. It'll only run on EV for a kilometre or two probably, but it does dip in and out of EV mode a little bit more regularly than some other hybrids. I'll tell you about that when we get to the driving section. Now, behind those buttons, there's a covered center console thing with a tilty lid and a sliding cup holder bin, which is actually pretty handy. So you've got a pretty deep little cavity down there. There's another cup holder up in front here, a wireless phone charger as well, a storage cubby down below this bridge section. So there's no shortage of amenities, and you've got bottle holders in the doors as well. Okay, so what's not great about it? It's only got a dark headliner available, and there is no sunroof available either, even as an option. So that's not ideal, and you know, you can tell that there is some cost cutting with some of these lower plastics, but the beauty of this design is that you can move this seat a long way forward and still be able to fit an adult, and then be able to fit potentially a baby capsule rearward facing in the back. So look, all in all, cabin design up front, very good. Let's check out the back seat, shall we? Just before I jump into the back seat, I want to show you these doors don't open very wide, so they're not going to be ideal for putting a child in and out of a car seat in the back, but look, that might still work for you. It's just something you've got to be conscious of. Now, let me show you what the space is like in the back seat, and voila, I'll be there. The back seat experience could be a deal breaker for you depending on what kind of life circumstances you're in. If you are, well, an empty nester and you're looking at this as a second car, it could be fine. If you're a couple and you don't have kids yet, it could be fine as well. But if you do have kids, there's something that might make it a deal breaker in the back seat experience. So there are no directional air vents back here. And while it is a small car and the air does flow pretty well through the cabin, it just might not be the ideal family car if you're looking for something that's small and luxurious because, well, yeah, you don't get air vents and that's not ideal for those longer road trips. But if you live urban and you don't really do long road trips, it might be perfectly fine. There are ISOFIX points and 3 top tethers in the back seat, and the space is not too bad. I mean, this seat is set for me at 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall. And yes, my knees are hard up against the seat and my feet are a little bit tight underneath there. Headroom's not too bad for someone my height though. There's only one map pocket. You get bottle holders in the doors. You get no flip down armrest with cup holders, but you do get a couple of USB-C ports down there. So I guess you get some stuff, but you don't get everything in the back of the LBX. I mentioned it's based on the Toyota Yaris Cross and it shares a similar powertrain. It's a 1.5 litre petrol electric hybrid system. So you've got a 3-cylinder engine teamed to an electric motor and a nickel metal hydride battery, not a lithium ion, which is a bit different to some of the other hybrids out there, but it does still have a CVT transmission and the choice of front wheel drive or all wheel drive with an extra electric motor at the back. Now, strangely enough, all versions come with the same combined power output of 100 kilowatts. So there's no advantage really unless you need extra traction in terms of stepping up to the all wheel drive version. So let's go for a drive and see what it's like. Can you hear that? That faint rumble is the 3-cylinder petrol engine that combines with the electric motor under the bonnet of this car. And look, you will hear that a little bit and it might not be the most serene soundtrack, but then it switches off like it just did and you can cruise in EV mode. And you'll do a lot of that if you do a lot of urban driving like I'm doing right now around Piermont. I'm here at the launch of the Lexus LBX and I tell you what, it does have urban-friendly manners, this car. Yes, you will maybe get a little bit annoyed by that petrol engine noise, and Lexus says that they've done a lot of work to make it a bit more muted than it is in the Yaris Cross, because it is pretty loud in the Yaris Cross. So I think that it is good enough for this application, and for the most part, you probably won't be hearing it all that often anyway, unless you go off out and about traveling on the open road, or maybe if you do a lot of, well, asking a lot of the engine. So if you're a lead foot, you might find that you'll hear that 3-cylinder kicking into life a lot more, but I reckon it's pretty good in the way that it jumps between EV, petrol, or a combination of the two, and the CVT automatic, that's why it makes so much noise really. It does obviously give it that sort of soundtrack, but look, it's still good enough and it's fast enough, let me tell you. I've driven this car now across all 3 specs and I reckon that all of them are punchy enough for a couple to drive around urban or to even go for a longer trip. It's not underpowered in any way, I don't think. It's just certainly not an enthusiast's choice, but I don't think that's what it's trying to be. I think it's trying to be a luxurious car, and it does that in a few other ways as well. The ride comfort is very good. Lexus has done a lot of work to make this car feel a bit different to a Yaris Cross, and it does in a good way because it's very well sorted when it comes to the ride. The front wheel drive ones, well, they can lose traction a little bit over sharp edges when you're giving it a bit, but if you've got the all-wheel drive one, you don't really notice that sort of thing. And yes, I think that for most people, the all-wheel drive is probably a step too far. You don't really need it unless you are planning to go on unsealed roads or to the snow, or if you live somewhere where it rains all the time, then maybe it'll be advantageous there. But I think the front wheel drive versions are the ones to pick, and I think that the entry-level version, in fact, is the pick, for me at least. And it's also a bit of fun as well. I've been out on some different roads than I'm driving on right now today in this car, and I reckon that you will get your thrills if you're not, 100% focused on outright power and acceleration in this car, because it does corner very well, and it's got a nice direct action to it as well. So a nice tight turning circle that makes it feel pretty agile, and yeah, it's fun enough, I reckon. To me, this doesn't feel like a Yaris Cross that's just been touched up to be made into a Lexus. No, it feels like a luxury SUV that just happens to be a tiny little Lexus. So they've nailed that. All right, so let's talk about fuel consumption. This car is one of the most fuel efficient vehicles on the market that you can buy. The official combined cycle fuel consumption figure you'll see on your screen now is mind-blowing. If you can achieve that, you're going to be doing very, very well for yourself, and you'll be saving a lot on petrol as well. And if you're wondering what I've seen across this test today, which included some spirited driving in the all-wheel drive, you'll see that number on your screen now, and it also included another stint in the front-wheel drive version, which was a bit more efficient. The average, well, speaks for itself, at least based on what the display says. But look, I've found that Lexus and Toyota products, the displayed figures seem to be pretty accurate when you do actually do the at the Bowser maths by yourself. So yep, it's efficient, no doubt about that. At the time I'm filming this, which is mid-March 2024, there is no ANCAP or Euro ANCAP safety rating for this car, but it comes extensively equipped when it comes to the technology fitted to this vehicle, including autonomous emergency braking, pedestrian, cyclist and motorcyclist detection. There's a lane keeping system with active lane keeping assistance and emergency lane keep, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, plus there's front and rear parking sensors with low speed auto braking, and a surround view camera system. So it is stacking up really well from all of those elements. Plus you've got adaptive cruise control, and there's a semi-autonomous parking system on the top spec version. So you're not really left wanting in terms of the safety technology on offer in this car. And it does have 8 airbags fitted as well. So yeah, I reckon it is a pretty safe little car. Lexus has a fantastic reputation when it comes to ownership perks and benefits, and this car is no exception. Even though it's the smallest one and the cheapest one, it does still get heaps of great features when it comes to the ownership program. First off, let's cover off the normal stuff. 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty, which is great. Pretty good for the class, in fact. And there's also a 5-year cap price servicing plan. Your services are every 12 months and 15,000 Ks, but the problem is the pricing. It's $595 per service for this car, which is more than twice the amount of the Yaris Cross that it's based on. But I think with the servicing, you're actually paying for service. And that means that the car can be picked up and re-delivered to you when it's time for a service. They can even leave a loan car for you. It does come with some roadside assist included as well. And look, I think that it stacks up pretty well, even though the servicing costs are a little high. I think the Lexus LBX does offer big luxury for a little price tag. I mean, it's not a tiny price tag, still just under 50 grand for the entry-level model, but I think that that entry-level model is the one that stacks up best if you are looking for something that offers luxury and value on its side. But if you need all-wheel drive, the top spec one could be right for you as well. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you choose the LBX, or would you choose one of those other rivals or something completely different? I'd love to hear from you, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.